go down. Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
Welcome to another episode of 40 Days, 40 Night. I'm your host, the Kung Fu Hebrew Saul G. And let me just make sure, I just wanted to make sure my mic was pinging, so make sure my face is doing what it need to do. But let me go ahead and get that back up real quick. I'm coming at you on a different day of the week this week because the lesson that I had planned for you on Saturday was going to talk about the different cultural influences on Christianity when I bring that up. But one of the largest sections when I was, doing my research and preparing my lesson was seeing like the devil, Satan. It was a large part of it, and just dealing with this one area, honestly, would have took up probably about, this lesson night only gonna be about 30 minutes, but it would have took up about 1/3 of the topic. So I said, well, let me go ahead and basically get this out of the way, and then I'll address it again on Saturday, but just briefly in that lesson. But I just wanted to just kind of go ahead and just talk to you about this because I think this is something that's extremely valid for the practicality, day-to-day life of some people call themselves a Bible believer, Christian, Hebrew, Jew, Catholic, whatever. We have to understand what and who Satan is. So the name of this lesson is going to be called Who is Satan? A logical discussion about accountability. And I'm just going to go ahead and get into it real quick. All right, opening discussion. Who is your greatest source of problems, oppression, or stress? I think this becomes very, very important because what we are doing or what we are attempting to do, anybody who believes in the majority of organized religions, whether even if you're in the Nation of Islam or if you're a Moor or some people call it Hebrew Israelism or however they want to call these new things, they're still based on ancient religions, and the majority of religions that are practiced today are still formed from an ancient source. So when you start looking at how the religions, and I don't know how many people would disagree, but I think everyone understands that all religions are man-made. And a lot of times, because we know they're man-made, then you have to understand that when we're dealing with religion, we're dealing with, at the time, people who were trying to make explanations of things around them. How did things come to be? So a lot of religions, they are based on nature. They are based on good, bad things, the weather. A lot of these different things that these religions were based on. So the one thing that we have to understand is these religions also had to make sense of their problems. Whoever would be oppressing them, I wouldn't necessarily say stress, but any type of things from fertility problems to the harvest and crops and your cattle and your livestock and all those different things. These ancient people, without all the modern technology, because I think sometimes we forget so quickly that we live in what's called the information age. Pretty much anything that you want to look up, and you want to try to prove or disprove or whatever the case may be, there's so much information and there's so many sources out there that you have access to, that our ancestors and the people who created all of these religions and things and books and wrote down all of the things that we like to use and argue and debate about now, they didn't have the same access that we have now. So I think at this point in time, like I said, as someone who considers themselves, I don't consider myself a Bible believer, but the Bible and the people surrounding the Bible and the books and aspects of the Bible is where I base my faith in. However, and this is going to be another lesson another time, when we speak about the Bible as a whole source, or we spoke about the Bible as the uninspired word of God, then the problem is man got hold of the words of God. The problem is man translated and changed and manipulated the words of God. So in doing that, I believe, and hopefully by the end of the night's show, you'll be able to understand what I mean by that. It is people not understanding what they were reading, what they were looking at, and then trying to not only apply it to their language or to their group of people or whoever they were trying to get their points across to. That's basically how we end up where we are now. So just a quick question just for you to consider as you live your day-to-day life. I'm going to do a lesson about Job, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I have a question. Everybody, and I know sometimes as so-called Bible believers, you want to take everything in the Bible as literal, right? There's nothing allegorical, there's nothing whatever. But a question that I have, and I'm going to do a show on this, is, was Job a fictional character? And I'm not going to say whether I believe he is or not, but there is some things that we need to identify that kind of go outside of the biblical narrative. Because if you look at how the Bible is set up and you look at how everything is going, there are normally, as I call it, a receipt to be able to trace you back to another individual. So when it comes to Job, I say, when did this take? There are questions that you should have about the book of Job. When did it take place? Who is Job? Where did he come? Some of those things are explained in the book, but I'll get into that in another lesson. But just something to think about. Reread the book of Job and see, is it possible that this could just be a folk tale to basically give, like what the majority of folk tales, they teach a lesson. And obviously people know Job would be a tale about patience, right? Whether it's true or not, we know like the outcome of what Job is trying to teach us. So whether or not it's fictional, non-fictional, it's true, it's a fact. I think at the end of the day, what you learn by reading the book of Job is about having patience. It's about persevering in unheard of circumstances. Kind of sort of when you are going through your day-to-day life and you feel like the walls are closing in, like everything is just as bad as it's going to be. You can use a story like Job to say, well, I mean, it can't get that bad because look at what happened to him and look at everything that happened in his life. So I'm going to get to that. And my second question for your personal study questions, just in your time and your personal time during the week, do you believe Christ will return in our lifetime? And what evidence through prophecy to support that? So all the prophecies of Christ, some people say they're throughout the entire Bible. I'm not here to debate that tonight or talk about that, but based on all the prophecies that we have biblically, do you think Christ will return in our lifetime? And what specific prophecies, chapter and verse, book, would you say support you believing that he will come in our lifetime or he won't? So let's get right into the lesson tonight. My main sources, as always, going to be the Amplified Bible, the Tanakh, the Antiquities of Jews by Flavius Josephus, the Blue Letter Bible, and the 54-book Apocrypha. I don't think I'll be using anything but the Bible tonight, so let's go. First of all, we got to start off at the beginning, because tonight is talking about the devil or Satan or whatever name you want to have for this entity or being that was created. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we have to talk about going back to Eden, because once again, I've made this plain, I think in the first video I ever did, about, I think it was called Back to Creation. And I say back to Eden. In Genesis 3, the serpent, the term right there, you have the Hebrew word right there. That's going to be in the Strong's Concordance, H5175, Nahash, okay? And that is the same word used for the rod and the statue that Moses had. Now, the reason why I do not believe, and once again, this is, you can just say this is my opinion, but I could say, and I think I might start talking like this biblically. To me, it has to be a fact, because if the serpent in the Garden of Eden was the devil, or it was Satan, then we have to explain some things. So it says, now the serpent was more crafty or skilled in deceit than any living creature of the field which the Lord God had made. And now in the Amplified Bible, it says, and the serpent, and it has Satan in quotation marks. So once again, even though I like the Amplified Bible because it does give some extra side commentary, I'm going to disagree right here, because right now you have to explain, number one, how did the Satan get here in devil form? We are right off the cusp of creation, right? So what you're telling me basically would be, okay, there were 7 days, and I'm not debating how long those days were. Were there 1,000 years, the Bible says, in God's eyes, or they're literally days, like 24 hours, right? So we just get out of creation. Woman, man and woman are created. Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden right now, and we don't know what time frame passed. However, you're going to say, because the story of the devil, which I'll get into in a little bit, is that he's allegedly a fallen angel. So you would have to explain how a fallen angel took the form of a snake to deceive humanity at this point in time in creation. Because the one thing that the Bible doesn't say when they were created would have been when the angels were created. Now, if we say they were created with the heavens, that's up to you to decide. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the Bible doesn't say when angels were created as far as it relates to creation. So the fact that the Bible has a word in the Hebrew, because you got to understand the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, the New Testament was written in Greek. So when we have a Hebrew word that means serpent, and it's the same serpent that was used to identify the rod that Moses used and the statue that Moses created, then I think we have to understand that it was a snake. Now, serpent, right? Because the other thing about it is, if you look at my picture that I have on the screen, a lot of y'all would say that is a serpent. It's actually not. It's actually a lizard that lives in California. I believe it's called an alligator lizard, right? So the fact that the punishment for the snake was what? If we go to Genesis 3, it talks about the Lord said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the cattle. So once again, there's a comparison to the serpent and some other animals that are around, right? And more than any animal of the field. I don't even understand why I have to keep explaining this, but it says any animal, not a being, not a fallen angel, not a devil, not a demon, not an entity. It's clearly talking about an animal of some sort. And then it says, on your belly you shall go. Okay? So if you look up any historian, if you look up any researcher, anybody talking about the history of snakes, prehistorically, right? Because a lot of people say, Bible people, y'all don't like to deal with science. So I'm going to deal with science right now. I'm going to get to that, I think, in my next slide. But I'll get to that then. Okay, so let me just keep going through this. So the term serpent. There was also another term that was serpent in the Bible, which is H8577, tanin. That is a word that was used when Aaron cast down his rod, okay? Because you got to remember, Moses and Aaron, I mean, both of them did different things, but they use a different Hebrew word, okay? Then we also have the term viper, which is 8660, which is Fa. And then we have the term for an adder, which is HH207, which is Shephi foam, okay? So in the Bible, we have 4 terms that are going to be used to basically talk about some sort of snake-like snake-like animal. So I've already gone over that. So let me just go to my next slide. So real quick, a scientific look at snakes. The oldest snake fossil that has been found, I meant to put fossil in there, but it's named after the Hebrew word for the serpent, and it's called Najash Rio Negrina, okay? And then they say, scientists say that snakes evolved from lizards. Now, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, okay, that is what is called, you can Google it. Once again, you can look it up. It is called a legless lizard. I'm sorry, a legless lizard, right? So if you look at that on the bottom, you say, oh, that's a snake. It is not, okay? If you look at that oldest snake at the top, that is supposed to be the Najash. You see, it has little feet on the back, right? I believe some say it had 4, but this one had some feet on the back that we no longer have. If you look at the bottom, I believe that's the bottom of a either an anaconda or a boa constrictor. If you Google it, snakes have some sort of, I forgot what they call it. They have bones that basically would be where they might have had legs at one time. So I'm not saying that in the garden, some people say that he chopped his legs off. I'm not here to talk about that either. I'm just saying there is scientific evidence that say, or the majority of all your scientists, zoologists say, snakes evolved from lizards, which means what? At one point in time, they had legs, so they weren't going about on their bellies like the curse in Genesis 3 said. So you have to just basically look at that for a quick second, and then know that with evolution over time, or however you want to look at that, now they don't have legs, and then they go upon their legs. But if you look at the anatomy of a snake, there is basically some once again, I ain't trying to be no zoologist, but there is, like, I forget what they call it. They have like a place or a port on their structure where they technically would have had bones or legs. So just want to, bring a little science into the debate, because, sometimes people say, Bible believers, Christians, anybody, you don't want to deal with science. So scientifically, science goes towards where the Bible goes as far as the whole snakes, they used to be lizards, whatever debate, okay? Satan. So let me get into Satan real quick, okay? Satan is H7854 in the Strong's Concordance. It means adversary. The first time it was used in 1 Chronicles 21 and 1. Okay, so if I go to 1 Chronicles 21 and 1, just to basically show you when it was used. So 1 Chronicles 21 is the first time you're going to see the word Satan in the Bible, okay? And it says Satan, and then in quotation marks it says the adversary, because that's what it means. The adversary stood up against Israel and incited David to count the population of Israel. So once again, you have to ask yourself, what is going on during this time? If I go in order and I go to the end of 1 Chronicles 20, we've got Israel going to war with the Philistines. We've got Israel going to war with the Ammonites. We've got them basically at war with some people. Even talks about them fighting some people who descended from giants, okay? So that term Satan, because once again, we got to remember this book has been translated from the original Hebrew to English. So when you see that term Satan, it's not saying Satan stood up against Israel and incited David to count the population. It's saying he had an enemy. Who was the enemy? And I'm put that guy right there because that's supposed to, in my opinion, represent the Philistines. They were the greatest adversary or enemy to Israel. Some people will say that's still what's going on over there in the Middle East right now, or the Palestine-Israel conflict that's going on. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying, historically, these people have been going at each other for a long time. David and Goliath, this has been a very big thing, but it calls a Satan right there, okay? The princes of Philistines. The princes of the Philistines describe David as a Satan in 1 Samuel 29 and 4. So when you go to that it is from the perspective of the Philistine princes talking. So when they are talking about David, the Hebrew word that's going to be used when they describe David is he is a Satan, or he is an adversary. Okay. In the book of Job, he is described as the Satan. Okay. If you know something about the Hebrew, if you add once again, I'm working on my Hebrew to get it a little bit better, but the term for Satan is Satan. But there's a character, and once again, if you know Hebrew, you know what I'm talking about, to make a word the. So it's Hasatan in the original Hebrew, which means the Satan. Okay. And it's basically talks about, in the first, like I said, Job 1 is basically asking the question. He's having a conversation in the middle of the angels and God, and he's like saying, hey, what have you been doing? He's like going to and fro in the earth. So the Satan, to me, and that would be like saying the David, right? It's almost you're talking about a thing or even a job title. Okay. If you go in Zechariah 3, it says the same thing. The Satan is standing at the right hand of the angel of the Lord to resist him. So whatever's going on in the book of Zechariah describes once again as the Satan, not just Satan, capital letter, meaning that it's referring to a person or entity. Okay. So that is Satan. Satan continued. The term Satan, once we get to the New Testament, you have to understand Satan now changes into a being of opposition. He changes into a being that controls spirits and things like that. So let's get into that. The term Satanas is from the Greek G4567. That was first used in Matthew 4 verses 10, and this is when Jesus was tempted by Satan. Okay. And when it's used in the Greek, it's now termed as an accuser, because the one thing you have to realize is when Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, right, you have to understand, like, what are we talking about here? Because it says that Satan or the devil, or I got to go into that a little bit deeper in a second, but if I turn to the book of Matthew 4 and 10, I'll just break that down real quick. So the book of Matthew 4 and 10 says, then, because it uses the term the devil first, right? And then it later uses the term in Matthew 10 is the first time we hear Satan, but it talks about the devil tempted Jesus, right? But you got to remember, then Jesus said to him, go away, Satan. Okay. We got to remember, I think Jesus called Peter Satan. Yeah, later on, that's under my next little slide. But later, he's used as the controller of evil spirits, and that's Matthew 12 and 26. So we see him as someone who allegedly had the power to tempt Jesus. And then later on, by the middle of Matthew, he's now able to control spirits. So it says, if Satan cast out Satan, and now it's talking about demons. So he started out as someone who could have the power to tempt Jesus. Okay. Then later on, he becomes, in the same book of Matthew, he becomes someone who is the controller of demons, or the like Lord of demons. And Jesus called Peter Satan in Matthew 16 too. So we're seeing Satan being used for multiple different things, but Peter, we know, is not Satan. Okay. Satan in the concept, I call it the New Testament concept of who we want to believe Satan is. Okay. In John 13:27, it says that Satan entered Judas. Now, I have a problem with this, because once again, if all of the disciples were empowered with the ability to cast out demons, right, then why wouldn't they have cast Satan out of Judas? But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, just getting in that. The fact that the Bible says that all of these things Satan did during the life of Christ, he tempted him, right? He was the one controlling the demons when they were casting out the demon-possessed people. He called Peter Satan, and Satan entered into Judas. Now, that would be something different, because once again, when we're talking about Satan, if we're going to make Satan like this being or this controller of demons, then we would also need to see in the Bible an example of when Satan entered into a human being. And what I mean by that, we've seen spirits and we've seen demons, but this, from my knowledge, will be the first time Satan entered into a human being, as far as we know. So we're talking about someone who is not on equal footing as God, but we're talking about somebody who was opposed to God entering into one human being to betray Jesus. When it seems like, based on what it seemed, that should have been enough for maybe a demon or something like that. But once again, and now, like I said, once we get to Acts through Revelation, Satan is now an adversary to God with demons and a realm to dwell and control. Okay, so that's when we start talking about hell and who's in hell and where the demons are and all those other types of things like that. But you have to understand, like, this evolution of Satan. It went from, in the Old Testament, just being talking about any adversary of Israel, any enemy, any opposition of Israel, could have referred to the Philistines, to now we're talking about a physical, spiritual entity that has the ability to enter into human beings, that has demons or fallen angels now that he's able to control. And he also basically has like a dwelling place. Okay, so let's keep going. So now I've talked about Lucifer. Let's talk about, the Satan. Let's talk about Lucifer, because the problem is we call the devil Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, all these different names that he has. But the problem is they always normally refer to something else. So the term Lucifer is only used once in the Bible, in Isaiah 14:12, and that's going to be H1966, and it means Hallel, which means light bringer. Okay, and in this term, when it's used as Lucifer, what it's translated into, it describes the king of Babylon, not a fallen angel, not the Lord of demons, the ruler of hell, or an adversary of God. So let me just go to the book of Isaiah real quick, just so I can show you what I'm talking about. In Isaiah 14, chapter 12, and once again, I'm reading out of the Amplified Bible. It says, "How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the ground. You have been weakened. You who have weakened the nations." But then, if you keep reading on, it's clearly talking about the king of Babylon. And because if you get down to verse 26, it said, "I will also make Babylon a possession of the hedgehog and of the swamps of the water, and I will sweep it away with brooms of destructions, declares the Lord of hosts." Verse 22, I'm going to go back. It says, "I will rise up against them, says the Lord of hosts, and will cut off from Babylon name and survivors, and son and grandson, declares the Lord." So right here, when you're talking about the term or the name Lucifer, it's talking about the king of Babylon. Now, I don't know if that's referring to Nebuchadnezzar, the Great, or which one it's referring to, but it is referring to the king of Babylon in the book of Isaiah. But that's another term that just gets swept under the rug. And now all of a sudden, Lucifer can be the devil or Satan as well. Let's keep going. This is Beelzebul or Beelzebub. Now, the Hebrew word H1176 is Beelzebul, which was the Philistine god, aka the Lord of the Fly. Okay, and he was worshipped in the city of Ekron, because if you actually go into the Bible, I'm not going to do it because it's unnecessary, but there was a Philistine god called Beelzebub that was worshipped in the city of Ekron. Okay, so if you look to your right, that is supposedly what Beelzebub looked like. He's got horns. He's got I don't know if that's a staff with some weed on it. Some other ones show him with a pitchfork, but I'm gonna get to that in a second. But the term Beelzebub in the Bible is referring to what was called the Lord of the Fly. The Greek word G954 is Beelzebub, the same thing, but it's the proper name of Satan, or it's a dung god of Chaldean origin. So you can see the connection right there. there is a dung god. If you know what dung means, that means, you know, feces. So what the feces attract? Flies. So once again, these are the names that are going to be used. So once again, the name right here, G954, that name of Beelzebub is only used in the gospel. It's not used anywhere in Acts through Revelations. Okay. And I'm just basically speaking about the King James Version, but let's keep going. So the reason why I put these up here is because you also have, I believe that's Baal, but you have these different depictions of Beelzebub. Also, one, like I said, he's depicted as a fly deity. All right. The devil. So the first time devil was used in the Bible takes place in the book of Matthew 4:1. And I think I already kind of went to that. And the word devil originates from the Greek word diablos. Okay. And anybody who speaks Spanish knows that devil in Spanish is diablo. So it's pretty simple to see how these things come. But like I said, you've got Satan. I already explained where that came from. It's just an adversary. Lucifer. It was described as the king of Babylon or the bringer of light. Beelzebub. It was a deity of pretty much the biggest adversary or enemy of Israel, which were the Philistines. Now we're talking about the devil. And the devil is not used anywhere in the Old Testament. So now we're seeing the term diablos, and that comes from the Greeks again. All right. So I'm not gonna really do a Google break right here. I just want to kind of get to the end of this, just so you can kind of understand where I'm going. Demons and demons. Okay. The first time the term demon or devils as a plural. Now you got to understand the devil is different. That is speaking of a singular noun, right? So the first time demon or devils was used in the Bible takes place in the book of Matthew, verse 9 and 32. Demon originates from the Greek word, and I believe that's like daimonos, G1140, and then you also have the Greek word, whatever that says, and that's G1139. So demons and devils being these other entities, we only see this in the New Testament. Okay. And remember, the entire New Testament was written in Greek. It was never written in Hebrew. Okay. So we have to understand these concepts that just come to place in the New Testament, which is like Hades, the underworld. So what I've done right here is I've shown you like a picture of the underworld. All of our concepts of a hell or a lake of fire, they all come out of Greek mythology. The fact that there is someone ruling over, Satan is called the Prince of Darkness. That is exactly what Hades is called, the Prince of Darkness. Okay. And that's Cerberus, his three-headed dog. But if you look in his hand, he's holding a trident as well. It's kind of cut off in this picture. But these are concepts that only exist in the New Testament. When you want to actually start getting the hell being like an actual place. When people say if you're not saved, you're going to burn in the lake of fire. All of these concepts come out of either Greek mythology, or there was I don't know if it was a poem, but there was something called Dante's Inferno where he talked about the 7 rings of hell, right? So that's where a lot of this stuff comes out as well. Our modern, the way we envision it in our brains, okay? So let's keep going. So the devil as a fallen angel, Matthew 25 and 41 speaks of the devil and his angels, okay? So once again, we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions, but you gotta go to, like I said, Matthew 25 verses 41. And it says, then he will say to those on his left, leave me, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire, which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. Okay, so once again, this concept of the devil being an actual person, the concept of demons being fallen angels, this is only evident, or it only exists in the New Testament in this first scene when Jesus is having a conversation. So you have to understand that all of these concepts are basically formed in the New Testament, where the devil becomes this evil figure, okay? Because even if you want to talk about Satan or anything else, in the book of Job, he apparently seems to be more or less of a employee of God, if you want to look at it like that, because God asks him questions and he tells him where he's been. I would ask, why would God ask where he's been if he's supposed to be all knowing? But I'm not even trying to get into that yet. Okay. So we see him saying, and somebody brought up a good point where basically in the book of Job, God and Satan make a bet, and God's basically saying, hey, have you seen my servant Job? He's perfect. And the Satan says, well, that's only because you blessed him and only because you protect him. By kind of, if you take all those things away, I believe he'll curse you. So there's kind of this heavenly spiritually wager place to basically say whether or not Job will curse God if he kind of takes his hand upon him. But God sets the rules and says, hey, you can do anything to him, but you can't kill him. You understand what I'm saying? Don't kill him. So that lets you know right now that the devil has no power, or Satan has no power, unless God allows it. Because right there, it looks like he's doing what God asked him to do. Okay, so now if you look at Revelation 12:9, it speaks about the devil being cast out with his angels. But once again, Revelations is the last book of the 66 canonical Bible. So nowhere else in the book does it really talk about Satan being cast out of heaven or anywhere. Because once again, you have to ask yourself, what happened? Are you telling me that there was a revolt in heaven by angels who were then cast? Because you have to understand, in the passage of time, when would this even have happened? Because if Revelations is speaking about the end time, somewhat prophecies, right? Then you have to ask yourself another logical question. When was Satan cast out? Give me a date. Give me in biblical succession. Was Satan cast out of heaven before or after David became king? Was he cast out of heaven before or after the flood? Was he cast out of heaven before or after the Garden of Eden? But we don't have any context or any sort of time constraint to actually say when some of these things are happening. And then last, the devil as a fallen angel, it says in Revelation 20:2, he will be locked away for 1,000 years. Now, the question is he locked away right now? Because if the 1,000 years are up, then that means he's free, and the devils and the demons and all this other stuff. So you got to look at it like, if this is supposed to happen post-revelation, pre-revelation prophecy, it's just questions that I feel like, as Bible believers, Christians, whatever you want to call yourself, you don't want to ask these questions.
Don't ask. I said don't ask. I said don't ask. No questions.
So this is why sometimes we have issues, even people who are out there doing ministry or other things like that. You need to be able to understand what you're reading, because if you don't understand what you're reading biblically, you have to understand that Satan, the same way some things in the Bible change from Old Testament to New, then we're also going to say that the concept of Satan changes from the New Testament. But the bottom line is, if I'm going to say there's an old covenant and a new covenant, then you have to explain how the old covenant changed the concept, or how the new covenant changed the concept of the devil. If you want to say the new covenant changed us from law to grace, so be it. But you can't explain how the new covenant took us from the Philistines being Satan to now Satan being this controller of demons. It just doesn't make biblical sense. If you don't believe in the Bible, then yeah, of course, all of this is just fairy tales and fables to you. But if you believe in this book, then you have to be able to give an origin of Satan. You understand what I'm saying? I'm big into comics and stuff like that. Every comic book character has an origin story. So it would be a terrible origin story for a person to be a group of people who were the enemy of another group of people, and eventually he becomes not he, because we're talking about a group of people, not just one person, but multiple people. So you would have to explain in this origin story how a group of people became one person who's now in a position of power and leadership and authority. And so it's just a lot that you need to really kind of just take a second to think of. All right. And I think my next slide is going to be my last slide. Satan, the devil in real life. And this is what I put up for myself. Okay. This is just me speaking because I don't feel like the devil is a real person. Let me tell you why. Because if they say the devil is busy, or the devil is in your life, or the devil is coming against you, then you have to ask yourself another question. Is the devil omnipotent or omnipresent? He can be in multiple people's lives at the same time. Oh, the devil was coming against my health yesterday. Am I that important that this one angel, because if you're going to go by the biblical narrative, which the church teaches, the devil is one person. So what makes me so special that out of the billions of people on earth, the devil would decide to come into my life? Because he's only can be at one place at one time. Unless you're going to put him and say he has powers equal to that. Oh, no, he just sent his demons. Okay, well, that's different. But the bottom line is how we give the devil so much credit because at the end of the day, we don't want to take accountability. You understand what I'm saying? And this is what we got to get to. The Satan or the devil in your real life. Look at your social media. Look at the conversations you have with your friends and family members. Are you literally telling your family members that the problems that you have in your life are because of this mystical being who lives in hell and controls demons? Do you call your friend? Like I had a conversation with one of my good friends from high school today. We talked for 2.5 hours about problems that we were having or things that we noticed that could cause us problems or stress. None of it had to do with the devil, as in this being that we want to create so we don't have to take accountability. Nothing had to do. I talk to my sister every single day. You know who we never talk about? The devil. You know who we never talk about? Demons. But you know what we'll do in the church? You know what we'll do in these different biblical communities? We will use the devil as a scapegoat because you don't want to take accountability for the people you deal with, for the decisions you make, and all of the problems and things that you have in the life that are a lot of times your creation. So on this picture, I have women. So when I say women, I'm a heterosexual man. So in my life, you know who my Satan is? You know who I complain about? You know who my biggest adversary is? Women. Because I deal with them. My wives are my biggest, and no disrespect to my wives, but you're my biggest devils. Because I'm going to tell you who I would complain about, who I would say is my biggest cause of stress, my wives. Period, point blank, bottom line. And then you flip it to them. Who's their Satan? Who's their? It's me. Because I might be the biggest level of stress. Your boyfriend, your baby father, your baby mama, your family members. These are your Satans because why? They are your biggest adversaries. Your friends talking in your ear, telling you don't do things, telling you to do certain things. Those are say, hey, man, smoke this blunt. Hey, drink this drink. Hey, man, let's hit the club. That is a devil. That is a Satan in real life, not this mystical being that just has a pitchfork and horns and lives in a lake of fire. It doesn't make any sense. The IRS, every year I got to pay taxes. That is the devil. You understand what I'm saying? If you don't pay them, you can go to jail. They can try to jam you up. They can take away your property. They can garnish your wages. They can do all of that. That is an adversary. That is the devil. That is the devil, in my opinion, in real life. Not this guy who's supposed to be fighting angels and demons at the end of days or during the rapture or whatever you want to believe. In my opinion, that dude don't exist. He don't exist. And we gotta, as believers, we gotta be able to grow up in our beliefs. And it's like believing in, people say believing in God or Jesus is like believing in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. But what I say is at least God has some consistency, right? Throughout the Bible. But the bottom line is we have converted and contorted the devil into this all-powerful being that is the source and the cause of all bad, all negativity in our life. And the last picture I have was just a guy looking in the mirror. I am the biggest Satan in my life. Not my wives, not the IRS, not the US government, not the police, not white people, but me. I am the biggest Satan in my life. Let me tell you why. Because I make all my decisions. Nobody else makes my decisions for me. I am my biggest adversary. The decisions that I make, the people that I decide to deal with, the fact that I am the one making these decisions make me the biggest Satan, the biggest devil, period, point blank, bottom line that exists in my life. And you yourself as an individual should be able to see that. You are the biggest Satan in your life. You are the biggest devil in your life. And you are the biggest adversary in your life. If you don't look in the mirror and realize that you are the biggest hindrance, or you are the biggest like reason or justification for the reason why these things are happening, then that's just because you want to take a lack of accountability. So I just feel like at this point in 2023, if you want to blame all of your problems on the devil as word, or all of these different things, just use the Bible as an example. Did the devil make David kill Uriah and sleep with his wife? Did the devil make Ham go laugh at Noah after the flood? Did the devil make Moses not obey his command? So allegedly that's why he didn't go into the promised land. Did the devil tell him to kill that Egyptian and bury him in the sand? Once again, these are just humans making decisions. And I feel like at this point, the same way a lot of people didn't agree with him, but I'm not going to even mention him because I don't even want that to be connected to this podcast. But the bottom line is accountability is one of the biggest things that we lack, not only as a people, not only as a community, but as an individual, as a race, as a gender. Everywhere we lack accountability. And it's so much easier to just put the blame on this mystical horn being with a pitchfork than it is to say, you know what? That was my fault. You know what? I made that decision. You know what? This is what I want to do. You know what? We keep trying to break it up, and we keep trying to make excuses for the decisions that we make. The devil ain't making you go on that website and watch what you're watching. The devil ain't making you go buy a pair of Jordans when your rent is due. The devil ain't making you go get your hair and nails done when your kids is sitting at home eating chicken nuggets. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we got to understand those are us. These are us problems, not anybody else's. So I really think we need to re-examine this concept of the devil or Satan, because if you want to believe he's real, by all means, continue to not take about accountability for your lives. But the devil didn't make you cheat on your wife. The devil didn't make you divorce somebody. The devil didn't make you break up with somebody. The devil didn't make you sleep with somebody. The devil didn't make you break the law. The devil didn't make you go to jail. The devil didn't do any of these things. But it's so much easier to just blame it on somebody or some entity that don't have nothing to do with your problems than it is to go ahead and just say, you know what, I messed up. And I think that's what we need to try to aim for. But wow, I've been talking right now for about 50 minutes. I apologize for my show going a little bit longer than normal, but I hope you was able to get something out of it. And I hope you can actually apply this, because the one point about believing in whatever, however you decide to believe, is application. If you're going to continue to apply the devil in your life as a reason or an explanation for the reason why you do the things you do, then you're going to continue to have, in my opinion, the same problems. It's only once we take accountability for our own actions can we actually get progress and move forward. So just want to leave you with that. Once again, I'm still going to be talking about the image of Christ taken from Ptolemaic Egypt and other cultures on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. But as you can see, I was this other culture thing because I had to talk about the devil, and he's copied from, in my opinion, from Greek influences, Philistine influences, other Zoroastrian influences, which I didn't even get to, which I'm gonna probably touch on a little bit on Saturday, but I just wanted to go ahead and break that down for you. Tomorrow, I got a really good show of undeniable evidence. It's not gonna be, it's probably my most controversial show because in my first three, I did the Trojans, the Vikings, and the Romans. So none of these, nobody that I know that is black is claiming any one of those people. But tomorrow on In Undeniable Evidence, I will be talking about the Black Indians, or the Black Natives, or the Black Aboriginals, as they like to call themselves. So I will be talking about a group of people who actually do claim and say that they are these people. So once again, if you're into those type of things, like I said, I hope you've enjoyed the last one. Those supposed to be entertainment and things like that. But tomorrow, I am actually going to bring out some evidence that a lot of them like to use to try to justify for how they think or feel. When I say they, based on what my dad told me about our DNA, I guess I could say I'm somewhat Aboriginal as well. But once again, this is way off topic, and I want to make sure I keep things focused. But I do want you to know, if you want to tune in tomorrow at 7 o'clock, I will be talking about the concept of there being black people here before the transatlantic slave trade and before European settlers got here. So that's what I'll be talking about tomorrow. I hope everybody has a blessed Friday. Hopefully you get a nice little paycheck, man. Take some time for yourself. If you need to, man, take a take a self-care Saturday and do what you got to do. But until I see y'all tomorrow, man, y'all be blessed. I'm out.